This is how a gangster state runs, not how antitrust enforcement is supposed to work in the United States of America. Every time corporations and lobbyists use political influence and money to thwart the actual merger review process, the American people lose. We get a marketplace with more corporate concentration and consolidation, reduced competition, less innovation, and mired in political influence peddling. Prices go up, wages go down, the economic elite profits, and economic inequality intensifies. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to all of our witnesses. Thank you for joining us. Today's just the second time this Congress that the administration has an official testifying before the Judiciary Committee. And when we hear Roger Alford's testimony today, everybody will understand why they're not testifying about what's actually going on behind closed doors over there. In April, Mr. Alford, who is a distinguished professor of antitrust law and constitutional law at Notre Dame, began serving as the principal deputy assistant attorney general in the Antitrust Division. That's the #2 spot at Antitrust. And by July of this year, Professor Alford was fired for insubordination after he blew the whistle on DOJ's corrupt approval of a merger between Hewlett-Packard Enterprise and Juniper Networks. Although the Antitrust Division strongly opposed this merger, its opposition was overridden by Attorney General Pam Bondi's then Chief of Staff, Chad Mizell, and her then counselor, Stanley Woodward, after Hewlett-Packard lobbyists urged them to ignore and bypass the sweeping antitrust problems that had been identified. Professor Alford, thank you for sounding the alarm today about backroom corruption, political favoritism, and betrayal of the rule of law at the Department of Justice. We're grateful to you for your courage in speaking out before this committee. Our colleagues have described this hearing as anti-American antitrust, but I'm afraid they're not interested in actually dismantling monopolies, collusion, or price fixing. On the contrary, their policy is all about elevating the interests of the largest corporations, especially the ones donating directly to Donald Trump and MAGA, over the public interest and putting them all far beyond the reach of U.S. foreign and domestic antitrust laws. Our expert agencies like the FTC, the FCC, and DOJ review mergers to assess whether a proposed deal complies with the relevant antitrust laws or public interest standard, including by protecting U.S. consumers from rising prices. If after applying the law to the facts, they find that the merger is not in the public interest, they can sue to stop it or propose conditions on any new combination. But under this administration, merger review has turned into another instrument of corruption, a way for the president to reward his rich insider friends and punish companies he dislikes, including news companies that have been critical of his administration. Antitrust enforcement is now driven by pay-to-play corruption, political favoritism, shakedowns, and retaliation instead of the facts and legal standards in each case. It's not the public interest that controls outcomes, it is the president's political and financial interests. Take the case of Hewlett-Packard Enterprise's purchase of Juniper Networks. When DOJ moved to block it, Hewlett-Packard Enterprises hired 2 lawyers with connections to President Trump and his men, Mike Davis and Arthur Schwartz, for $1 million apiece to lobby the White House, Attorney General Bondi's Chief of Staff, Chad Mizell, and the Attorney General's counselor, Stanley Woodward. Although DOJ staff and Trump's head of the Antitrust Division, Assistant Attorney General Gail Slater, strongly opposed the merger of these 2 large companies, the lobbyists got Mizell to ignore not just the facts and the law, but also the recommendations of Donald Trump's own antitrust team in order to bless the deal. We don't know what these lobbyists told Mizell over cocktails in a private club in D.C., but we do know that he short-circuited DOJ's legal review process and gave the green light to a merger that, according to the Department of Justice's own press release, will, quote, significantly reduce competition, resulting in large segments of the American economy paying more for less. That was a backroom deal that centralizes power and sends more wealth to the wealthy, making life a lot more expensive for the vast majority of Americans already struggling to stay afloat in this economy. Or take Skydance's acquisition of Paramount, which is owned by the Ellisons, close friends and big donors to President Trump, who plied him with financial and political favors to ensure Paramount's purchase of Skydance would go through. The company not only gave tickets worth about $12,000 to the soon-to-be chair of the FCC, Commissioner Brendan Carr, but also collected Carr's candid advice on how to effectively lobby his agency for approval. While Chair Carr sat on the proposed deal, the White House squeezed Paramount to pay President Trump $16 million to settle an utterly frivolous personal lawsuit that he had filed about the way 60 Minutes edited an interview with Kamala Harris. And he pressured Paramount to give him an additional $20 million in free ads, well, just for the hell of it. Even after this corrupt tribute was paid, the administration extracted more, installing an informant or minder directly in the newsroom at CBS to make sure its news coverage would always be suitably pro-Trump, adding naked violation of the First Amendment to this bonfire of corruption. Even now, the president's saying he personally will be involved in the process of Warner Brothers' sale, emphasizing that CNN must, quote, be sold because of the news outlet's discourteous coverage of his presidency. And Netflix and Paramount both know that the person they really need to lobby on the proposed acquisition of Warner Brothers by either company is the president himself, and so they've already gone to the White House to make their case. This is how a gangster state runs, not how antitrust enforcement is supposed to work in the United States of America. Every time corporations and lobbyists use political influence and money to thwart the actual merger review process, the American people lose. We get a marketplace with more corporate concentration and consolidation, reduced competition, less innovation, and mired in political influence peddling. Prices go up, wages go down, the economic elite profits, and economic inequality intensifies. As our witness, Professor Alford, said of these lobbyists and their White House ties in August, quote, regardless of the outcome, their commitment is to exert and expand their influence and enrich themselves as their friends and supplicants are in power. And these cash for merger backroom deals reflect the broader patterns of money corruption that define this administration. So today we will hear from Roger Alford about the difference between fair enforcement of antitrust laws and backroom deal making. I hope my colleagues will listen to him and take to heart the warning that he shares about the economic costs of political corruption. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back to you.